Welcome to the No Fear podcast and the No Fear live broadcast. I'm your host, Tony Blauer. If you're into mindset training, performance psychology, personal development, you'll dig this new format. No Fear Live is a unique broadcast, and it's different from the No Fear podcast. We decided to go live because we wanted to create the opportunity to interact with people like you all over the world, where anyone can log in and ask questions, and in some cases, you may even get invited into the show. The great thing about the live broadcast is that it's much more personal for the listener. That's you. Remember, self-defense isn't always about a confrontation with someone else. The first and most important fight is winning the one inside your head. Mr. Domyancic, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, Tony. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. This is going to be an interesting call. So listen, whoever's on the call and listening in, you're in for a treat. This is going to be more of a conversation and a catch up because I've known Matt over 20 years now, right? Like
25, I think.
25.
Could be more. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I was actually looking for the picture of us. Remember Spear Street at Colgate? I was like, I knew I had that somewhere. I was like, it was just, at Colgate University, there was a street named Spear. We took a picture underneath it. But what we're going to do is, most of my audience are functional fitness freaks and military, law enforcement, public safety, martial artists. You can see that Matt is still a physical specimen, was an animal athlete, and actually came. I think our first course was at Smith & Wesson at the ground fighting course.
I did too. I skipped grad school for 2 weeks to do spear instructor and cement friendly ground fighting. Yeah.
So he was kind of pretty scary coming in there with the strength training, football, all this stuff, and it was like, oh shit. And I was like, thank God he's a nice guy and he likes the spear system, because I thought you were gonna maybe end my career early on. But why don't you do this for my audience? Because your career has, we could spend the whole show talking about our relationship with Spear, with PDR, but why don't you kind of, like, you're stuck in an elevator with somebody and they go like, hey, tell me your life story in 5 minutes. Because you've gone from like serious athlete to, I want to be a cop, to becoming a cop, to getting on SWAT, to getting injured, to where you are now, where, you can see on your signature here, the tactical chaplain. Some people are like going, the hell is that? It sounds pretty cool. I don't want a regular chaplain. If I'd like a tactical chaplain, of course. But why don't we do a Reader's Digest, start at the beginning and fast forward? We'll talk a little bit about Spear and us, but more importantly, like your current mission, working with on the resilience, mental health, physical fitness, or I forget where I heard this, but we always talk about mental health. And then I heard it was some athlete that said, there's physical fitness and there's mental fitness. There are things you can do to have a mentally fit mind, from breathing to meditation to visualization to stuff like that. But I'm going to turn the mic over to you. I'm going to sit back and listen to your story.
So Reader's Digest, basically from Ohio and Pittsburgh, from an early age, like a fitness freak into nutrition, lifting, sports, football, on and off, meditation and journaling, even as a kid, kind of into these self-care things. Play football and power lift for the Air Force Academy first 2 years. Wasn't going to be able to fly. Transferred to Colgate. Finish up there. Thought I wanted to be a federal agent. People said go to law school. I met somebody that said, nah, forensic science, the next big thing. I end up going to grad school for forensic science, thinking I want to be FBI. I'm training in New York City before MMA was cool with Vinny Giordano, also Roger Denton in Connecticut. And Vinny, great guy, says, you gotta meet this Tony Blauer guy. That's how I got connected with you and got to do, even as a grad student prior to law enforcement, you and I think it was Bert DeVerney at the Smith & Wesson Academy gave me permission to go through the law enforcement courses. So through that, met a bunch of good cops. And then also through a summer internship, longer story, I stayed at Storm Mountain Training Center, well known for sniper schools, Rod Ryan, SF, DC SWAT. I was supposed to go to Blackwater Lodge all summer, and I just wrote papers on ballistics, but really ended up at Storm Mountain, just running and gunning, sniper school, rappelling, CQB, learning from SWAT and special ops guys. And the few feds that came through weren't into fighting or shooting or kind of like-minded. And I learned through grad school experiences through Storm Mountain, hey, the feds aren't everything they were in the movies growing up. They're not out in the streets, getting after it. So after the grad school thing, I discerned that, I want to be on a team. I want to help people. I was already like a deeply spiritual guy. How can I use my gifts and talents and keep growing, learning about spirituality and psychology? I thought someday I might want to be a priest or a psychologist. I said, hey, I'm going to be a city cop. I can get the action. I was a strength coach at Yale and doing sports ministry there while I was in grad school and then while I was a cop. But anyways, I decided to be a cop, thought it was a good way to, quote, do ministry because everybody's hurting and you can learn about psychology in the trenches, not just a textbook. A lot of my friends that are mental health professionals or clergy, it's just suburban upbringing, grad school, hang a shingle, or you're in an office. They haven't experienced any of this stuff on the street. So figured I'd try to get on a SWAT team and basically had a life of being a college strength coach at Yale and Georgetown, being a cop, patrol, peer support. Before peer support was popular and definitely not either for ghetto patrol guys or SWAT guys. But I was into the mental health, made SWAT, was a police academy instructor for fitness, officer survival, was implementing breath work with early heart rate variability devices, training with heart rate monitors, had a nutrition program like Division I athletes. I rebuilt the weight room to have bumper plates and all that before, even before CrossFit was taking off. And then because of a lot of my conditioning was ground and pound dummies, uppercut bag, Muay Thai bag, knee, elbow, Thai kicks, more sports specific conditioning, and was loving life, coaching at Georgetown, doing ministry, teaching at the academy on SWAT. And then I got hurt, had surgeries that went bad. And that's a whole longer story in itself. Anybody that's dealt with work comp, ignore, delay, deny, ends up, I have permanent medical issues from a surgery I never should have had in the first place. Wow. And was over medicated on opiates, benzos, muscle relaxers, psych meds, antibiotics, which killed my gut and my immune system. And I ended up super obese, wearing diapers, forced to medically retire. And we now know that Big Pharma knew all these things were addictive. Thank God I didn't get addictive. But I was like, one of my SWAT buddies picked me up to the hospital once, and he used to be a narcotics guy. And he's like, dude, this stuff's really bad. I'm like, they know I'm a cop, but it's like surgery and meds. It's a lot like the VA too. They put you on a ton of meds. And long story short, my dream life ends early, like at, I don't know if it was 34 when it all ended. And I moved to LA because I had a psychiatrist in the DC area that was into meditation, yoga, tissue work, had a nutritionist, the gut, mind, mood connection long before it was, it's more known now. It wasn't known then. But she told me I needed to move to LA for functional and integrative medicine. I was like, Jesus, like it's expensive, bad traffic, super political. DC's bad enough. I want to move to the mountains. She's like, now's not the time to be a recluse. Anyways, moved to California and just start the healing journey, fighting work comp to get functional and integrative doctors, to get back in shape. Went back, got a second master's in sports psychology, wanted to get a PhD in clinical psych. As soon as I ended that first master's, it's my second master's, my first master's since retirement, I got a call from work comp. You cost way too much money. You need to go back on drugs to save money. And I'm like, that stuff almost killed me. It's part of the medical records. They cut off my disability pay and my medical care for 3.5 years. And I have to go through all these court battles to prove that my medical care is valid. It just costs more money than putting you on drugs to do neurofeedback, talk therapy, physical therapy, vitamin IV, supplements, balance your hormones. So that's what landed me in California. And I ended up getting a third master's in pastoral theology with a concentration in spiritual direction, which is like spirituality, depth psychology, pastoral counseling. And I only did that because I got a full ride. And it was something to work on myself while I was going through this nightmare of, this fighting for my medical care. That's why I didn't get the PhD. And long story short, never planned on being a police chaplain or anything like that. But now I'm pretty much a one-man nonprofit, police chaplaincy, peer support, wellness. It's kind of hard to define or put it in a box because mental health ties into our physical health, as you mentioned, ties into nutrition, fitness, sleep's important. You can't separate what's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart with your emotions. What are your, spirituality? How are you living out your values? How do you relate to the people closest to you? How do you relate to your community? How do you relate to humanity? How do you relate to the greater good if you don't believe in a higher power? And what's your framework for finding meaning and purpose even when there's suffering and loss and adversity? Which, if you're a first responder or a veteran, you're immersed in the suffering of humanity. A lot of people have adverse childhood experiences. That stuff is getting, those unconscious wounds from childhood are getting scratched in war and when you're a first responder. And we're not giving swimming lessons or lessons for how do you brush and floss with trauma and suffering before it eats you up. And very much mental health, chaplain, peer support in the police and fire world, if you even have it, and if you would even trust it, because a lot of times people don't trust it, it's reactionary only to full-blown PTSD, addiction, you got in trouble, or you have suicidal ideation. And why are we going to wait until somebody's 300 pounds, out of shape, addicted to junk food, tobacco, caffeine? I could say, hey, you get to work out with Tony Blauer, you can go roll with Jocko, and I'm going to give you meal prep. It's still going to be hard as hell and a lot of work to get back in shape. Or if you have a mouthful of cavities that are black, and I say, hey, I'll send you to this dentist. He's got a horrible reputation. He's not going to give you any anesthesia, and he's going to yank all your teeth. Like, are you really motivated to go versus let's brush and floss throughout your career, give you swimming lessons for the adversity. And, if we find a cavity early, we can fix it without it being a big deal. So I don't know if that's a good background story. In a nutshell, my approach is like proactive mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health for all people, but first responders and veterans don't have the resources that Division I athletes do. They don't have the resources that the Tier 1 special operations units do, but they're living incredibly difficult lives that are, life and death if you make a mistake. And this ties into the mission that we've shared in common. Mental health for a cop and firefighter, especially for a cop, involves fitness, more martial arts training, more scenario training, and more gunfighting training. People think cops are racist and abusive. And when they see these videos, they don't recognize they're spazzing out because they're untrained. It's a failure to train issue most of the time. So that is all part of mental health and wellness as well.
It's I appreciate you sharing and some of the levels of vulnerability that most type A personalities wouldn't touch on or get into, and it's why you're effective at what you do. Part of your story made me think of a conversation I had with Dr. Jeff DeTesso, who's on our team, and you got to meet him one day. And he's a psychologist full time, but he has a love of working with vets suffering with PTSD, and he adapted a whole bunch of our. And in fact, I don't even know why I never even thought to link you guys up, because you could probably. We've been talking about putting a program together on the resilience, mental fitness, mental health side based on our psychobehavior and fear management research. And I know you've been trying to get my research into the academic world for a long time. And what's different about you, and this is the connection with Jeff, is when Jeff has some vet with suicidal ideation in his office and he's really struggling, and he said, I sat down, I showed them psychobehavior. He said the psychobehavior immediately resonated because it looked like a strip mat. And everybody who's SWAT, law enforcement, or particularly military can appreciate the simplicity of you're over here. This is the kill zone. This is where you need to move away from. And they saw the fear loop and the action and the scenario and the whole cycle of behavior element there, which Lisa, if you can stick that there, that'd be great. if you're still in the background, just so people have a visual of that. But he said, and this is a cool thing, and this isn't there's a newer version of the cycle behavior, very different from the one. Could you at least leave it up there a little bit longer? It was like we don't want anyone to look at it. The version that you saw back 25 years ago at Smith and Wesson was real different. We've gone through like 7 iterations of it, and when we connect in person, I'll show it to you. I'll break it down more. I'm not going to do it here. But what they saw was the red area was the kill zone, and the kill zone when you're in crisis, when you're dysregulated, when you're living in sympathetic. That's the heart rate pounding. That's the anxiety. You can pop it out now. Thanks, Elisa. And so he said they immediately resonated with the some of them said, wow, this looks like a strip map. I can connect. I'm over here. I got to get the fuck out of here. And you know the expression, like action beats anxiety, right? That you got to start moving. You got to do something. You got to move your mind. You got to move your body. The mind navigates the body. There's no such thing as muscle memory in the literal sense. But while you were talking, I was like, oh my God, I got to introduce you, because Jeff said when he would mention me, a lot of them, through, you know how long I've been training these guys, a lot of them had either gone through spear training a decade earlier or had heard about it. And there was just something about knowing that this idea of managing fear came from a guy who taught fighting, that like it immediately created an element of trust and rapport. And so I'm looking at you, you're turning 50, correct?
I'm just turned 49 on Saturday.
Okay. So happy birthday, bud. So you're next up is the big 5-0. You know, you're physically still a wicked specimen. You can see the fitness there. But what I'm going at here is like whatever I brought in terms of a theoretical credibility for my life's work teaching combatives and defensive tactics. What I'm saying is you showing up to talk to somebody about self-regulation and emotional focus and self-control is 10x whatever I could, because you were the cop, you were the SWAT guy, you did the Division 1, you did all of that stuff. And this is like a little hat tip to you that like we need to get not just your message, because the message is consistent with all messages. You know, hey, we need to help people. You know, you can't sweep the shit under the rug. I've got a lot of cops that work for me. One of them just retired recently. He's told me stories of images that him just telling me things that he's seen has stained my brain, and that's secondhand. He like I wasn't there on the scene when he opened the door, right? You know, he's just going, holy shit. And so what you're doing is super important. But what I'm just highlighting is the fact that you are the former action guy. You've done all the stuff that when you say, if you put your hand on somebody's shoulder and says, I know how you feel, I know what you're going through, it's so different than, and I don't want to get in trouble here, but you know, having some really out of shape, overweight individual telling you it's okay, I know how you feel, and you go, well, no, you've never had somebody shoot at you, you've never punched somebody in the face, you've never fought on concrete, you've never, you know, fought for your life in the hospital, right? I mean, like, so the wealth of your experience, man, is like, if you haven't thought of it in this capacity, really lean into that. And that's what we got to get out there, because I don't know. I've met a lot of chaplains over the years running around. I don't know any of them that have the combined experience that you have at all these levels to bring the message to life. So kudos to you, man.
I appreciate that, Tony.
Yeah. So if you could wave a magic wand, or next year, 3 years, 5 years, what do you want to do with this? Is the tactical chaplain your brand? Is that you want to get this message out, and how can we help do that?
Well, My preference is being in the trenches, but nobody pays for chaplains, or not many departments even pay for wellness. And, people say they care about mental health. And even if you do get involved, sometimes it can be hard dealing with other chaplains, mental health professionals, people within the agencies. And then when you're with an agency, often the cops don't trust it because they think it's going to lead to hurting their career. The tactical chaplain thing was people pushing me to get on podcasts that I didn't want to do at first. The cops are like,
Okay.
do it. Then they're like, well, you need a website and you need an Instagram. And I was hesitant to do all that. And somebody said, you need something catchy. And somebody said the tactical chaplain. And I was like, is that going to be goofy? Like, nah, it'll be something people can remember and go to the website.
Right.
So what I would love to do is find funding, and I stink at fundraising, but I do put on retreats and workshops. I just wish I could do it more often, where we're doing more fitness, martial arts, tactical gunfighting, but we're integrating breath work, yoga, journaling, sharing our stories, and talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, talking about destigmatizing therapy and other ways of learning lessons from the adversity and hardship. Also, outdoor activities. I go to Missouri every year. I take cops from the tough parts of LA, and we do clay pigeon shooting, fishing, horseback riding, ATVs, just playing and laughing and immersion in nature. And there's science behind outdoor activities and being in nature that lower your cortisol, all that stuff. So more retreats, more workshops. And then even though I like being in the trenches and one-on-one, even the cops themselves are like, do the podcast, try to do more speaking engagements, and maybe start doing more online, making videos and having Zoom meetings and things like that. So
yes, some of that stuff is easy to do. You should absolutely have, start, whether it's a Facebook group, just start getting people talking, and have your weekly, Zoom call where you've got a theme and you talk to the group, and who knows where that'll lead. At a minimum, it's just getting people to talk. One of the stuff, you mentioned training earlier. There's so much stigma around chaplain spirituality. Like when you said spirituality, meaning are you living consistent with your values? If you say to me, and I'm a pretty open-minded, down I got my shit together, I think. When you say to me, let's talk about spirituality, my unconscious bias, who doesn't know if I believe in God or if I'm an atheist, or if there was a benevolent God, how come this could have possibly happen? Mm-hmm. Oh, so there is a God, but he's not benevolent. He'll fuck you up if he doesn't like that. So when you say spirituality, my brain immediately goes, But when you say, hey, are you living consistent with your values? I go, well, let's talk about that. What do you mean? Well, what are the tenets that you're big on integrity, on loyalty, on trust, on transparency. Like, are you living that way? And that's spirituality, but it's recognizing in the same way when you remember emotional climate training, right? The pre-contact cues, right? Mm-hmm. As a speaker, are you using something that, because of somebody else's hardship, unconscious bias, conscious bias, are you projecting a verbal or psychological pre-contact cue that makes them defensive and therefore not receptive? So if my role is de-escalation, so I can get and gain the trust, the tricky thing is, like, if you say, hey, I'm a like, I don't even like the word chaplain. Sorry, all chaplains, right? Just
I mean, you want to hear some funny stories? I'm speaking at the VA next week. They didn't even put my website on the flyer and did not say I'm a chaplain. No, it wasn't the first agency. I volunteer for numerous agencies. One of the first briefing or roll calls, I was introed just as the new chaplain. Everybody, when it was over, cleared out of there like there's an active shooter call. Nice to meet you, sir. Bam. The following briefing roll call, the sergeant was like, hey, Matt, here's a new chaplain, but hey, he was a cop on the East Coast, SWAT, college athlete, college strength coach. I did Krav Maga and Muay Thai with him at Elite Martial Arts for a couple of years. Really good guy. People turned around, drop F-bombs. Where'd you work? Yada, yada. Like,
Yeah.
There's the chaplain thing is stigmatized with the worst case scenario, priest that molested somebody, the pastor that hates gays, then get caught with freaking male prostitutes smoking crack,
Right.
and whatever hypocritical guilt, shame. We're all such terrible people unless I follow the rules to get to heaven, like your particular church. And even in Christianity, there's over 30,000 denominations, and every single one of them has people in it that are super tribal and say, these churches across the street are all going to hell. You suck. And if I ask your neighbors or the barista at the coffee shop, hey, what's Tony like? Because, you know, he talks about Bible study and he talks about going to church. And the barista said he's an asshole. He complains about his drink, this and that. The neighbors say you're a jerk. Well, are you really living out your values? And so many good cops, firefighters, and veterans were raised in a religious tradition, and they end up seeing horrible things at war on the streets, or you meet hypocritical, toxic, and very damaging or traumatizing people that are using religion in the wrong way, or just are not living it. So it's like, why do I want to be a part of this? And so Chaplain gets the stereotype of all of that.
So what's interesting, like, because if this were a marketing meeting and we weren't on a live podcast streaming around the world, I'd be saying like how do we lose the word chaplain until you give somebody your card after and they go, that was amazing. You know, how do I talk to you to learn more? And you go here and it says chaplain. Oh, I didn't realize you were chaplain, right? Because like no one's ever heard somebody like you talk like that, dropping the F-bombs and doing that, where Matt wants to talk to you about, you know, his journey of clearing his friggin' mind and his body from some of the whatever the pitch is. So like that cop that reintroduced you as SWAT cop, Krav Maga, grappling, Division I, this or that, he's going to talk about the connection between tactical fitness and mental fitness. Right. And now people are like, wait, that sounds fucking good. I want to be mentally tough. And then they get in and you're talking about, hey, you just came home and you just saw, you know, these dead bodies, this fire, everyone lied to you during the day, right? I mean, that's like everyone you talk to is lying to you. I wasn't speeding, officer. Even like a nice person that you don't have to fight, to the murderer who goes, I didn't do this, right? It's insane. What first of all, the world's insane right now, in so many ways. But like everything you said is great, and I'm just thinking. You know, I'm just thinking back. I don't know if you ever met or remember his nickname he's a pretty well-known narcotics cop named Little Joe. And but in 1993, when I first talked at the American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers, right? They're no longer around, but 1993, I'm there and I'm explaining to all of these trainers and cops, there's no such thing as a reactionary gap. There is the 21-foot rule. Shouldn't be a rule. It's the way it's being interpreted is getting people killed. It's getting people hurt. Your scenario training isn't scenario training. It's not a two-way street. You guys are just practicing complex motor skills. Stimulus gets introduced too quickly. Executive function is hijacked. You can't access your complex motor skills immediately. You got to recalibrate. We can make people safer if I remember Bob Willis coming up to me and said, holy shit, this is the missing link. You teach the 3 seconds before the fight, everyone else teaches. But that's where, if you don't control the fear, the initial psychological and emotional fear spike that affects your access to your complex motor skill or your threat discrimination, decision-making skill set, you're suddenly like, you're on video. It looks like you're, like you said, spazzing out. And it's because they're not getting the scenario training. The average crazy fight is 20 seconds long. So even somebody out of shape can have an adrenaline dump that lets them endure that. But that's a ridiculous low bar. Like everyone should look like you, and you should be a tactical athlete, because what you're doing, I wrote an article on this where I forget, I think it was for Caliber Press, where I said, a pro football player would not agree to play a game without warming up, without knowing who the opponent was, without, you couldn't call them and say, get to the field now, get your uniform on, we're playing. I mean, guys would do it, but they go like, what are you talking about? Like, when's the season start? Because I'm going to start training. But cops don't train, and they don't know every single day is possibly a Super Bowl event where someone's going to try and kill them.
We wrote an article on Police One, me and you. You just reminded me, probably 15 years ago. So we wrote an article about this type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have another more modern one on Caliber Press that probably unconsciously has some of the stuff that we wrote for Police One. But the whole thing here, which is insane to me, is you're right. Cops aren't funded. But I got to the point, and this is what I said. I said, listen, you chose to do this. Your administration doesn't. You'll get your car changed. Your car will stay in the shop longer than if you need a new partner, right? Like, something happens to your partner, you get a new partner the next day. Your air conditioning goes out in your car, it takes 2 weeks to fix, right? In other words, like, you're just a number at a certain level. You need to. I'm 63 now. I've been around for 43 years. No one, especially in the martial arts world, you know how many out of shape masters there are, right? Like nobody expects me to be in shape, and nobody goes, I wonder if Tony can still fight. I wonder if Tony can still move. I stay tactically fit for fucking me because I'm afraid of violence. I want to have options if there's sudden violence. I don't want to go, oh, when I was 30, I could have defended myself. It's like, anyways, I'm on a bit of a rant here. But I want you to be successful. And as counterintuitive as this is, I'm going to suggest, until it's right, Chaplain doesn't appear and spirituality doesn't appear, so that you get in the door and create trust, where you go, hey, I want to talk to you about fucking resilience in a fight, resilience in your career choices, resilience medically. And why am I a subject matter expert? I did this. And I want to share my experience so I can time collapse. You don't need to spend 5 years figuring this out. I can tell you right away things that will make you more resilient. And people will lean into that. And then they go, so, how do I find out more? And what about this? And you go, well, you can call me at 1-800-TACTICAL Chaplain, and go, holy fuck, you're a chaplain. You snuck that in. Only because, like, I want you to be successful, man, not just because we've known each other 25 years, but if you left all of that out, like the religious connotation, because of what words are iconic, if you left all of that out, what you're talking about is about wisdom and self-actualization, and being healthy and being happy to the extent that you can, given whatever cards you were dealt and whatever your career. And everybody wants to know that. But the second, if the second, like, someone goes, well, I'm an atheist, and you go, well, I'm a chaplain, they go, well, okay, have a nice day, I don't want to have lunch with you anymore.
Well, I was during COVID. Two stories. One, I ended up at one of the most dangerous police stations in Los Angeles, and they told me the only way I would get the trust is if I ride on the graveyard, the midnight shift, because those are the guys grabbing over 500 guns a year. So every Friday, Saturday night, I'm in the cage, 2-man car, behind, knees are in my chest, riding along, and they'll ask him, do you get paid? No, this, that. Well, anyways, long story short, find out I'm about to stop going because I can tell, man, I might be annoying them. I told my woman, this particular station is not like warming up. That night, thank God, that morning at 5 a.m, these 2 veteran guys I rode with that night get out. They're like, hey, we just wanted to let you know, we have, like, half of our guys have been in shootings. We got, the district attorney, we got all these problems in Los Angeles, and you're some jacked ex-SWAT guy riding around in the middle of the night and not getting paid. We thought you were a federal agent. We thought you were here to, they thought I was there to get intel. So that whole thing, like, does work. But see, here I am in the departments as a chaplain, and it takes time riding along, go lift with them, go shoot with them, do evac and pit training with them. So within those contexts, I am their chaplain. I forget what other stories I wanted to tell you based on something you said, but
well, I got an idea while you try to remember that. I still think that, if I said, hey, Matt, here's a present for you, I wrapped it quickly, and I give you this box, and it's an analog, old school alarm clock, a Mickey Mouse alarm clock, and I wound it up to the time, and I wrapped it in like old newspaper that had some oil stains on it, and I go, Matt, here's a gift for you. I know you're gonna love this. And you look at it, and it's a box with oil stain on the newspaper, and it's going like, you're like, is this a fucking bomb?
yeah,
In other words, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to think of like a way where if you come in as retired Matt, tactical Matt, and then you actually, this is interesting. I'm just kind of spitballing this now. You come in and people meet you as the ex-SWAT guy, the athlete. You go work out, you crush them in a workout, you program something, you say something philosophical, and then you say, hey, I would like to be a resource here as your chaplain, because that's what my education is. I would like to be here as your guidance counselor. I would like to be here as a mental health resource.
Mm-hmm.
Where now you got like 100 people who love you, and then they find out, oh my God, like this guy's got this other skill set. And now it's, and this from because I make this joke every time I do a class, and you've been in a number of my certifications and classes, where I always start off saying, hey, there's no such thing as a stupid question. What's stupid is not asking me a question. But most people, you'll run towards the gunfire, but around your peers, you won't ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'd always say, okay, no questions. Any questions now? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. And always 2 or 3 people will come up to me and go, hey, Coach Blauer, I got a question. I go, I just said, does anyone have any questions? Why didn't you ask me a question? Why? I didn't want them to, like, people are, it's funny. So I'm just trying to think of ways where you get much more buy-in, and then you drop the tactical chaplain angle. Anyways.
Well, the story I was also remembering was, for a year during COVID, I wasn't allowed to ride along because we thought everybody was going to die in California, right?
Right.
But there was a rehab that wanted me to, it's a longer story, but there was a rehab just for cops and firemen. I'd drive 4-hour round trip every Saturday, see every single person for 1 to 2 hours. And most of them were people, cops and firefighters dealing with PTSD and various addictions. Most were not religious. A lot were agnostic or atheist. But because I had a reputation of showing up, these are the things they would say. You listen well. We know you care. We feel like you understand. You don't judge us, and you don't give us bullshit, unsolicited advice. So if I'm in a situation where I'm getting repeat exposure, even like at these police stations, a lot of the cops that like me the most are the people that are not religious, because they're like, man, he's not going to try to convert you. And chaplain, that's a problem with chaplaincy too. There's a separation of church and state. Lemon versus Kurtzman's a Supreme Court case that a lot of chaplains and mental health professionals aren't aware of, because I'm not supposed to promote nor deter the pursuit of religion. And if it's religion, it's not about what I believe, Tony. I'm serving everybody. So again, It comes down to, what are your values? How are your relationships? How are you finding meaning and purpose through the darkness, the pain, and the suffering? And how can I help you do that better according to your values? So I'm not there to evangelize or Bible thump people.
Yeah. So I think it comes back to everyone listening to this and everyone in the world. And I wrote an article. There's a group that I mentor in our BTS 90 program, which is like these 90-day kind of a virtual workshop retreat type thing. And I tell people, you need to be selfish. And I get into that, but I also say you need to understand that everyone's a control freak, even if you don't think you are. And not in the I'm going to be in a movie of the week control freak, but we like things the way we like things. And I'll tell you this, here's a metaphor for the chaplain thing, and I'll drop it after this, because I loved what you said, and it was the atheists that made you think about the term atheist. Is that when I hear chaplain, I think of it associated with a very specific religion that I don't even know which religion. It's just like, it doesn't say tactical rabbi. It doesn't say tactical priest, right? And spiritually, so if I met the coolest rabbi and the coolest priest and the coolest chaplain, they would just want world peace and everyone to live happily ever after, right? But if they were all balanced in the way you are, the goal is the same, right? So you're not pushing people or soliciting. And so I think we come back to the psychology of words as icons. And you remember this from 25 years ago in my rants in the Spirit course, where I would talk about words are icons, and the degree of clarity with which we define something determines its usefulness to the listener. So if I said to you, do jiu-jitsu instructors teach self-defense? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Well, it's not a trick question, right? Yeah. If you say to any jiu-jitsu guy, can you use this jiu-jitsu for self-defense? And if I train with you, will I be able to defend myself? They're going to say, absolutely. Does Tai Chi teach people self-defense? Again, the same thing. All of them, you remember Yellow Pages?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was a joke for younger people on here. But if you open the Yellow Pages to the martial arts section, it was Kung Fu, Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, Thai boxing, Taekwondo. Every one of them said self-defense somewhere in their advertisement. So what I'm saying is this, and we're spending too much time on this, just my business brain, trying to unlock something here, is that if I say I want to learn self-defense, but in my mind, I don't want to learn to fight on the ground, and someone goes, I'll teach you, I'm really good at this. And I go, what do you teach? Oh, and I see he's a jiu-jitsu instructor. That unconscious bias changes things. But the Taekwondo, the jiu-jitsu, the boxing, the Thai boxing, they all say, we'll teach you how to fight so you can defend yourself. So I'm just saying, like, I just wish there was like a generic term that it's just tactical mat. And then, of course, because of this country's religious framework, it's always a chaplain at a police agency. I mean, the terminology there.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a way to slip it in there so you get, because some of the people that might need it most are the ones that have a lone wolf. They've already started to pull away, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's why riding, shooting, lifting, rolling, and if there was workshops and retreats, because hard asses go on these retreats, and then by the end of the 5 days, if there's somebody that didn't know me, because I'm like, there's going to be no evangelizing. I don't even do psychoeducation, and I tell the people at the retreat centers, I want them to unplug. And I mean, those are longer explanations of why not to have structure on a retreat for a first responder, keeping them out of game mode. But yeah.
Keep your arms down. Keep your arms down when we talk. I don't want to see your fucking biceps and can you go put a long sleeve shirt on? Did you work out before you got on the show just to make me look
just
bad?
Farmer's carries. That's all I had time for. I did some farmer's carries to move.
I love it. Let's pivot and switch first of all, I mean, this is more of the end of the show, but we'll throw it in here because I want to talk like a little bit of our history and how long we've known each other, and that's fun. But if somebody on this call wants to contribute, donate, share, or they know somebody that might be interested, Elisa, can you pop up Matt's website address? And you know what we should do also is can you pop that into the comments so people can, wherever they're following, can click it at some point? And I believe I was there earlier, there's a donation option in there on that page. So
and it's a nonprofit and it's tax deductible.
Go check that. This guy's busting his ass for no money and it's only after people get the experience with him that they realize the sincerity and legit nature of it, because there's so much, God, the world is so sideways and in shambles. It's like did you see the latest thing with the SPCA with the guys making $1 million a year and some scam with the SPCA where people are like, and who knows if it's even real? I believe it, but but it's like whenever somebody says, "Hey, would you donate to this cause?" But those of you that are those of you that are listening and watching, some of you are only listening to this, but if you're watching Matt and you see, this is the real deal. And I've known him for 25 years. So, okay, let's pop that off there. Here's a mutual friend of ours with an alias here. And this is so true. If every police department had a chaplain Matt at their station, there'd be a lot less cops with issues and problems. And this is so true. And this isn't cool. I'm not happy about this, Matt. Get your arms down out of the picture. When Wendy popped this in here, she always wanted to come out to do some of my training, but now she's going to one of Matt's retreats. Thanks a lot, man. You're costing me business already. Definitely get out there. How can we is that on your website too, to find out
everything about like the retreats, or just reach out to me individually? And if I could even get funding for plane tickets only, there's the retreat center, Peterson Outdoors. That's the one I go to in Missouri. They would put on more. They usually specialize with hunting and fishing for disabled vets.
Okay.
I've connected with them in some other places and was like, dude, here's the thing too about most retreats. There's Boulder Crest, Save a Warrior, West Coast Trauma, Sparta Project, Warrior Ascent. Go check them out. They'll do good stuff, but you have to have full-blown PTSD, addiction, or suicidal ideation to go. And that goes back to we wait until you have a mouthful of cavities, or what's it like being out of shape and trying. Hey, before the wheels come off and you get the second or third divorce, or you get in trouble, or you get fired, like, let's learn how to do life a little better. And there's a lot of ways to do it,
Right.
And we need to experience it. Like this whole PowerPoint thing, we trained you. Just, hey, you need to take care of mental health. Hey, maybe you should eat better. Maybe you should sleep. Maybe you should meditate. Maybe you should journal and do yoga. Like, that doesn't change anybody's life. Like, get people in an environment with people that are culturally competent, that they trust. So let's go find people like Tony Blauer, and I'm sure some cops and special operators that do things in biohacking in the healthy world, or train the parasympathetic nervous system. Have them teach those things and be like, hey, I'm a cop here. This is my military experience. So it's like, hey, he's not a candy ass, right? And he does this. And unfortunately, too many first responders and vets, they do say, hey, meditate, do yoga, or whatever their little solution is. And it's usually, if they say there's just one way, like, that's a red flag. There's a lot of ways to heal, a lot of ways to grow, and we all have individual preferences. But we need people that walk the talk, that have been in these professions or have credibility to be teaching this stuff. But we need to experience it, just like a panic attack. Like when you did the 1990 videos on the panic attack series, everybody thinks they're a badass until they get punched in the face for real. Right. It's a totally different experience. But we need to do that with the parasympathetic nervous system, and having good community and mentors and elders and maybe even professionals, and not stigmatize them, to share your story and get things off your chest. Learn the lessons that they might teach you, even if it's not pleasant or fun. Move through it and live life better.
Amazing stuff, man. I'm really proud of you, man, because it's really like it's I remember us being in touch when you were going through all the stuff with the VA and you had just moved out here, and that was horrible in itself, but you stayed the course, and you got your shit together, and you kept your shit together, and you're trying to help people. It's incredibly noble, and I'll do whatever I can through my network. And everyone listening to this, if you've been following the No Fear podcast for a long time, and at the end of the day, the fear is either a symbol and a signal that fuels you to something better, or it can spiral you. It depends on your relationship. And when we look at anybody that has their life starting to go sideways because of a disconnect from how they're living with their values, conscious or unconscious, I will tell you this. This is, again, my bias. You peel that onion, and the last sentence they say will be something like, I was afraid that. And so it always comes back to, in my experience and my decades talking to victims of emotional or physical violence, is at some point when you ask the next question, well, then this, that it comes down to, this was my fear. They might articulate it differently, but it comes down to psychological fear creates a movie in your mind where you're the producer, you're the director, you're the screenwriter, and you've also cast yourself as the victim in a movie of your creation, because you don't see a way out of the movie. That's what perpetuates the PTSD or inspires the ideation, because you're chronically feeding this depressing movie to your mind. And you've got to recognize that. If we go back to this here, this is recognizing the fear loop and getting out of that, because staying in there produces non-clinical and ultimately clinical anxiety if you don't catch it. So this is, like what you're doing is like so in concert and parallel with, and I think is one of the reasons why you loved our stuff. And this is maybe a good time to segue into, all of the conversations we had when you'd have all these psychology professors talking about stuff, and you're going, no, you gotta look at this shit. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, a lot of the sports psychology world, it can relate to sometimes even the Chaplain world. There's people that have a lot of education and theory and research, but they may not have experience practically applying it. So they have all these theories and hypothesizing, or they do studies on the people available to do the surveys are freshmen walking gym class, jogging gym class, dart throwing. You do some surveys, then you say, this is how I'm going to train Navy SEALs and NFL guys. Like, right. Give me a break. And you don't always have the same academic terms they have in research, but it's like, hey, human performance. Let's go back to whatever ancient warrior cultures and different professions. People have been figuring out psychology and sports psychology before there was a field studying it. And you're somebody that intuitively, through experiential learning, aka like panic attacks and everything else, have developed a system that is grounded in things that can be proven with the research and theory in sports psychology, but you've been practically applying it for 30 or 40 years. I forget what you said. So, and even what you're talking about, the fear loop, stress and trauma is stored in our physiology, and often it is unconscious, right? And you have to calm down your physiology and provide a safe container in your own body, as well as a safe container with the people around you, and that may be a therapist or whatever community you have, to be more in touch with your thoughts and feelings. It is unconscious. They're unhealthy patterns that we're repeating without knowing it. And we're drinking, sleeping with people we shouldn't sleep, more caffeine, more tobacco, more overtime, drive my motorcycle fast. Those are ways to self-numb, distract, disassociate from the things that are bothering us. And we need to calm our bodies and our brains, our minds down, be able to share it with somebody and start sifting through it for the lessons we need to learn. So all of this stuff ties into, even like spear in itself is an unconscious reaction survival mechanism, and you can hone it to be a hell of a lot more productive. Well, we need to do that with our other life experiences, especially trauma, adverse childhood experiences, and the trauma and suffering that you experience as a first responder and veteran, and you're exposed to in the families. Like you said, you hear the stories. Well, the families and friends of all these cops and firefighters are also hearing these horrible things that they maybe shouldn't be hearing all the time, and they should be taking it elsewhere.
Just making a note here. You said something, the connection, again, with all this stuff in terms of like let's get metaphysical for a moment, like self-actualization. We won't as a species do things if we anticipate harm coming to us, right? Innately at a survival level. So there's this level of fear of exploring like this. If I say, hey, I want you to go talk to my friend Matt, he can help you. It's like most guys don't want to open the vulnerability door, right? And so one of the things that's happened with our No Fear program, which of course those of you watching remember, No Fear is spelled Know, is that and I've had a lot of people confirm this, that the more you explore fear, even in micro doses of it, right? Like there's, the memes that go around, hey, do something that scares you every day. I don't subscribe to that. I go like, well, because they're talking about skydiving or swimming with sharks or walking on fire. I'm going like, some people can't say I'm sorry. Some people can't say I love you. Some people can't say, hey, I fucked this up and I want to fix this. And some people can't, one of the things, if you've ever been in, I don't think you've ever been one of our newer No Fear programs. I mean, it was always lightly sprinkled into everything I did. I mean, I always wove the emotional, psychological, physical. And I think that's what really separated all spear classes. Were never about just the tactical or the physical. It was you remember the 3 fight models, which was, which I wrote that in the late 80s. There's 3 fights. The first fight is between you and you. Do you have the will, the courage, the tenacity to go through this? The next fight is you and the threat, the bad guy. And then the third fight is internal affairs, the news media.
So I used to quote Dan Millman. If you only have one opponent, you're outnumbered, you already lost.
Yeah.
All this stuff you're talking about is so important. So important.
Well, this is, so the hypothesis, the working hypothesis is that, excuse me, my throat won't clear, is that when you lean into like your psychological fears, aka the movie in your mind, it changes your self-awareness. And when you change your self-awareness, you immediately improve your critical thinking. And when you have better self-awareness and better critical thinking, you can look at things in a more detached way and go, like, this isn't working, I should research this. But when you're kind of like in a cocoon of fear, you're not receptive, both through internal dialogue or external, somebody's trying to mentor you and they got their arm around your shoulder going, hey, what's going on? I mean, how many times have you walked into a room and you can clearly see somebody in your family or circle is doom and gloom, right? You can see it in body language and you say, hey, you cool? Is everything good? And they look at you, they turn, they go, yeah, why? What's up? Like in total denial, not realizing again that body language is in most cases about 60% of our communication. So
it's unconscious most of the time. And in these professions, something else people do, talking about do something fearful, do something hard, like the Goggins and the Jockos, like some people need that, like push harder, this and that. But the problem with these professions is, okay, what if I'm doing CrossFit, jujitsu, cold plunge every day, balls out, you're pushing way too hard and you're not tapping the brakes to rest, relax, digest, play, calm down your body and mind to even be aware of these things. And they can be unhealthy coping mechanisms as well.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is a lot of that can be the addiction, certainly better than heroin or fentanyl, but it can be that extreme, like you need that adrenaline to feel like you're in control of yourself.
Yeah. And you're avoiding the thoughts and the feelings that are unpleasant and uncomfortable. But that's what I say is your emotional, psychological, and spiritual weightlifting is the shit sandwiches and the unfortunate adversity in life that you didn't choose, that you didn't control. Somebody's loaded up the bar and you got to lift it. You got to try to lift it to move through it. There are things that are out of our control, but we got to learn the lesson they're there to teach us.
I love it. Let me send a message in to everybody listening. Hey, gang, a couple of things. A request. If you've been listening out for a second, at least drop that. Thanks. I just lost my train of thought. Hold on a second. Yeah. Everyone listening to this, every single one of you listening to this show knows a police officer, knows somebody in law enforcement, in as a firefighter, is in public safety. Do me a favor and inspire them somehow to come and listen to Matt's message so we can spread this out, so we can spread this. Super, super important. So that's a request for you, from me to you. I know a lot of people would just like to experience the training, and there are places, you're in San Diego, maybe we can figure out a way to, instead of the retreat being in Missouri, do more stuff that's more frequent, local. I don't know. There's a lot of
I
things.
would love to do that, Tony.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I joke about having Jiu-Jitsu peer support days where it is do some fighting, do some shooting or some working out, grill some steaks, and again, just a little bit of breath work or meditation or God forbid artwork, like make a tomahawk, something like whatever, but get community going or go
Right.
horseback riding or just do some things. I'm down with that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk offline after. I want to help you get a group going so you can do your own Zoom calls. It's so easy to do, but I know that it'll catch on. Not just, I mean, the message. Like I could rent an airplane and go, hey, get your shit together. Call 1-800. But people look at that and go, who's that for? Right? It's when they meet you, and they see that you are living through and living with all of this, and you're the real deal. I think that's compelling, that's huge. Let's just for selfish reasons talk about, because every time we connected, you would always tell me, how our version of performance psychology was either light years ahead or more. I just did a course at I'm not going to mention where it is on here for because it's a government group with a special type of audience. But the comment with this private group I did last week was that I've made so much of this scary information so accessible with our languaging that I don't get pedantic and make people feel obsequious by using, fancy words like I just did there. That when I used, you remember this, the comfort zone slide where it'd say comfort zone, discomfort zone, and holy shit zone, right? And everyone would laugh just like you're laughing now. And I go like if you were if this was the police psychologist, you would not say holy shit zone. You would say area of dysregulation that caused a parasympathetic shift to the sympathetic, and you'd be going, what? Like where I would build it out so it's how we would talk to our buddy or ourself, where I turn to you and I go, holy shit, did you see this? And you go, that's the holy shit zone. And that's an event or a stimuli that is way outside your comfort zone that is causing self-doubt and hesitation and procrastination. And if you don't have the self-awareness to fix it in a violent encounter, violence loves speed. And if you are in the fear loop, you are not transitioning, whether it's stepping off line and drawing your gun or charging the threat or ducking. That the refractory delay between stimulus response is not just a physics equation. There's a psychological component of your emotional psychological relationship to what the fuck's coming at you. Like how many times you've been out on patrol and that like this is a police assisted suicide event. Like this guy is like, and you're going, don't do it, just stop it, drop. And guys are, because we're not, if we come back to what you said right in the beginning, we are not doing scenario-based training where we're also challenging decision-making and problem solving through the fear loop. That's huge. Like it shouldn't just be shoot, no shoot, because that becomes like an athletic exercise. He had a gun, I shot him. He had a knife, I gave him a warning, then I shot him. What was the dis? I'm not saying that training shouldn't happen, but the more important thing is that the mind navigates the body. There's no such thing as muscle memory. And if it was just muscle memory anyways, like you don't want your trigger finger to make the decision. You want your mind to go, this is why I need to do this. But anyways, what let's I want to start to wind this down. I don't want to lose people. We'll try to keep these around an hour. Are there some things that we didn't talk about that you would want to share that we're going to get off and go, God, we forgot to mention this?
Oh, I sent you that super long brainstorm email. There's so many things I could talk to you about. It's just, I didn't know what we were going to talk about because me and you have never talked about mental health or spirituality.
Right.
But it is a part of training. Training is part of having better mental health and spirituality. And the person that is prepared for war is going to be able to be more peaceful on the street. Right. Yeah. So there's a ton of topics we could talk about. And I didn't know what you were interested in speaking about. So
I didn't. I looked at, just so you know, like Matt sent me, like a manuscript this morning of it was like this long. I was in the middle of 3 meetings, and I'm like, and I texted him back going, hey dude, I'm not even going to read this. We're just going to talk. My initial and listen, man, this is a great conversation, and you're welcome back anytime on the podcast, and we'll figure out that I wanted, as I learned more about what your current focus is right now, I wanted my audience, which is a lot of your audience, directly and indirectly, to get to know you more and learn more about you and your mission and your values and what's important to you. And I think we accomplished that. And then we'll have another, conversation. We'll get together now that you moved near me. Come up to Encinitas and we'll get together and shoot the shit, and we'll figure out what the next theme will be.
Can I drop some quotes real quick? Or
please. Yeah, go.
These are some quotes that I always use. First of all, we can only see others as deeply as we see ourselves. We need to be working on ourselves. There's a longer story I'll share for another day where I told a firefighter after a retreat, and he wanted to teach all this stuff to his family in the firehouse. And I apparently said, work on your own shit first. We teach people by how we live our lives and how we role model. So many people just start the healing journey, then they want to be whatever life integration coach guru. Pain that is not transformed is transmitted. Pain that is not transformed is transmitted. And if you don't heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people that did not cut you. If you don't heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people. If you do not heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people that did not cut you. And as a cop, that's often your family and taking it on to the next call, or it could be your coworkers. And a lot of this stuff's happening unconsciously. And I think I get this from Grossman in the 90s too, who I got to train with before I was a cop. Pain shared is pain divided, and joy shared is joy multiplied. So there's a lot of different concepts, but we got to be working on ourselves beyond. I do want more people to lift and fight and shoot, but we also need to be rest, relax, play, digest, parasympathetic nervous system, lower the cortisol, learn more about your heart rate variability, and also learn different ways to reflect on your life experiences for the lessons that they may be able to teach you, even if they suck and are unpleasant. Because if you signed up to be a first responder or the military, you're going to see some stuff that isn't pleasant. And every human being is going to end up having loss and pain and some grieving at some point in their life. When we're not giving a manual for that, it's like, no, just be happy. Everything's about being happy and toxic positivity, and let the food and pharmaceutical industries run everything. So
those are some amazing quotes, man. And I love them. I know that on your website, obviously there's an email to you. You're still using AOL, or what do you?
I have like 4 different emails, but I still use AOL.
Okay. That's the dial-up. Well, I hear the dial-up sounds from the 90s. I hope your server doesn't crash. Offline, I'm going to tell you what to do how to start a group, because you're going to get some emails from this, hopefully a lot, on how people can have you talk or access your message. That this is really, Matt, a field of dreams metaphor. Build it and they will come. And you just need to like start a group. Hey, every Wednesday at this time, I'm going to be talking this. You record the stuff, share the link to it, and you might have 2 people, on one call, and then one day there'll be 22, and then there'll be 222, and I think it's cathartic for you. Like, I love when I do the coaching. You remember the Latin expression I share in every single course I teach: "Qui docet decet." Those who teach learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I start a class, I thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to get better at this material, to get better at being able to protect myself, to get better at understanding how to manage fear, because the going through the course forces me to do it again. And if there wasn't the audience in the class, like, would I be teaching that many times?
Mm-hmm.
When COVID hit, I started a garage gym program, and we're approaching 700 classes.
Wow.
Since literally, I think it was class 685 this week, or 686. That's just in our open enrollment one, and then we have a first responder program. We got over 100 in that. So there's close to 8. That means that. And I've had some assistance from part of my team when I was traveling or couldn't make it, but I've taught probably 700 more times in the last 3 years than I've taught ever before. Like, so think about what that does for me, and what what I'm sharing with you is you teaching every week
Mm-hmm.
to an international community. It's going to refine your messaging. It's going to get your message out to more people, and it's going to touch more people who are going to be inspired to go deeper into this. It's it's counterintuitive to us, the type A personality. We don't want the vulnerability. We don't want to share. Are you crying? No, man, I'm okay. Like we don't, right? We don't want that. So like, you need to absolutely start a Zoom group, because that'll be the gateway to everything else. It's much more accessible. People can log in. They don't have to have their screen up, their video up yet. And I get that a lot when I do things like that, where, okay, like, why do I just have a picture of you, or and it's slowly trust, gaining that. So we're going to make that happen.
Confidentiality and being anonymous is a huge deal. Why even people that know and I'd say reach out, dude. There's an inertia to reach out because you feel like you're a burden when you're a fixer and a cop, a firefighter, somebody that served in the military, especially high-speed units. You're the fixer. You're supposed to be the rock. You're not supposed to burden anyone else. And then layer in the masculine spirituality and psychology, which we didn't go into. Men have way more mental health problems than females.
100%.
It's terrible. So being able to block yourself in a Zoom is actually a good thing in this context.
And at some point, this is one of my friends and one of our trainers in Australia posted this. Thanks, Bruno. Yeah, there's lots of people in other podcasts that we got to get you on and get the message out there. Does anyone have any questions for Matt? Pop them in real quick. Otherwise, we're going to start to wind this down. Questions or comments, just pop them in the chat, and we'll pull them up there. Folks, remember, everything we do is built around this whole, our No Fear program, and Elisa will drop the link to that in the chat there. To me, like, that really starts and gives you very simple tools on, okay, because if you're afraid to reach out to somebody, like Matt just said, there we go. That's the fear spike. That's the psychological fear. And if you can lean into it, and I'm going to move away to my trusty fuck fear sign, right? Everyone should know the acronym for that. That's not, oh, Tony's such a rude American, he's swearing. You're like, fuck is a cool acronym. Face it, understand it, control it, and know it. Face it, understand it, and control it, and know it. Nothing's going to change if you don't face it. When you face it, you are now given the opportunity to research it and learn more about it. And the control part is huge, because this can take days, hours, months, years for you to purge from your system. And or in some situations, there are events where you're supposed to be afraid. And so if no one's ever taught you that or told that, and that's part of my story, is like my parents, my guardians, my coaches never said fear's okay and fear is good, and fear means you care, or it means that you're getting ready, your system's adrenalized and it's getting ready. I would always associate that nervousness as lack of preparedness, because no one ever told me that's okay. And here's some box breathing and take a breath and focus on what you want as an outcome here. That would have changed my ski career, right? That would have changed my wrestling career. That would have changed everything. So
those are butterflies. You just teach those butterflies how to fly in formation. It means you're ready.
Yep.
If you didn't have them, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You know?
Right. Exactly. Like, and I've told that to fighters of mine, where they go, I'm a little bit nervous. Like, you're supposed to be nervous. You're about to get in a fight. Like, if you weren't nervous, I'd say he's not fighting. Like, something wrong with you. What the hell? Matt, this has been amazing. And I hope, I think you inspired a lot of people in the background. And we'll have you on again. But anything you want to leave with?
Just to remember that self-care is not selfish. Really hard in these professions, but if your well goes dry, you can't give anybody else a drink of water. And again, we can only know others as deeply as we know ourselves, and we need to work on our own shit first. And we influence other people at the department and in our family by how we're making changes in our lives. The whole actions speak louder than words, kind of like the religion versus spirituality, synergism or not. But anybody, if there's any individual or department that I could help in any way at all, please go to my website, reach out. I'm super passionate about this stuff. Thank you so much, Tony. It's so great to connect. And I would love to try to do more things with you, even beyond what we did back in the day with the DEA when we both first moved to California. We just did some fighting. I'd love to talk about the SPEAR system and the fear loop and integrate it into the mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Absolutely. 100% done deal. Okay, guys, thank you so much for sharing your time in the middle of the day. Please share this. Might be one of the more important podcasts that we've done. You know how I feel about our public safety professionals. They don't get thanked enough. They don't get paid enough for not just the rhetoric and abuse of whatever's going on in the world right now, but they're there doing things and looking at things that most of you can't even imagine. And, that needs to change. They need better training. They need better education. And there's a way to empower people or set them up for better resiliency in advance. Like Matt said, we're not waiting till you're 300 pounds and freaking out and thinking dark thoughts. Let's intercept this early. I mean, it should almost be part of recruit training. These are, this is the best way to run. This is the best way to stretch. This is the best way to meditate. This is the best way to breathe. This is the fear loop. But we can start making those changes. Matt, thank you so much, buddy. Hang on in the background there. And we'll see you in the backstage. Everyone, thank you for listening and participating today.